My sister always got everything: the cars, the trips, the praise, while I was invisible. But at Grandma's 80th, she mocked me one too many times. I didn't yell. I just pulled out a deed that silenced the room and exposed a lifetime of lies. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Inherited Revenge. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The migraine started somewhere over the Atlantic. A dull, rhythmic thumping behind my left eye that synced perfectly with the turbulence shaking the cabin of the 777. By the time the landing gear deployed over the gray, sprawling grid of the city I used to call home, the thumping had evolved into a sharp, blinding spike of pain. I pressed my forehead against the cool plastic of the airplane window, trying to ground myself. It wasn't just the 12-hour flight from Zurich or the exhaustion of closing the biggest merger of my career that had me feeling like I was vibrating out of my skin. It was the destination. Going home wasn't a comfort, it was a regression. It was stepping into a time machine that stripped away the woman I had become, Sarah, the senior fintech architect, the woman who commanded boardrooms in London and managed portfolios in Singapore, and forced me back into the ill-fitting skin of poor Sarah. Sarah, the invisible one. Sarah, the disappointment. I adjusted the collar of my coat, a nondescript beige trench I wore specifically for these visits. Beneath it, I wore a simple gray sweater and jeans from a chain store. My luggage was a battered duffel bag I'd kept since college, purposefully chosen over my usual Rimowa carry-on. I had to play the part. It was easier that way. If they thought I was struggling, they asked for less. If they thought I was barely scraping by, I could fade into the background while the spotlight remained firmly fixed where it always had been, on Emilia. My phone buzzed in my hand as the plane taxied to the gate. A text from my mother, Susan. "Dad is picking up Emilia from the airport. She has too many bags. Can you take an Uber? We'll pay you back later." I stared at the screen, the blue light stinging my tired eyes. I didn't reply. I just let out a breath that shuddered in my chest. "We'll pay you back later." A phrase I had heard 1,000 times, a promise that held about as much weight as a soap bubble. They wouldn't pay me back. They never did. And frankly, I didn't need the $40. I could buy the rideshare company if I really wanted to diversify my assets. But it wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. It was about the hierarchy. Emilia, perfectly healthy and capable, required a chauffeured escort by our father because her luggage, filled, no doubt, with outfits for her Instagram stories, was too heavy. I, who had just flown in from an international business trip that would secure my retirement before 30, was an afterthought, an inconvenience. I navigated through the terminal, the noise of the crowds washing over me. I ordered the Uber, opting for the basic option to keep up appearances, and waited by the curb. The exhaust fumes mingled with the cold autumn air, smelling like nostalgia and resentment. When the car finally pulled up to my childhood home, a 2-story colonial that looked slightly shabbier than I remembered, the driveway was already full. My father's sedan was there, parked crookedly as if abandoned in a rush. And right in the center, gleaming under the porch light like a crown jewel, was a brand new white convertible. Emilia's new car. I stood there on the pavement for a moment, the duffel bag heavy on my shoulder, looking at that car. I knew, with a sinking certainty in my gut, exactly how that car had been paid for. I knew whose retirement fund had been drained, whose credit cards were maxed out, and whose future was being leveraged to keep up the appearance of Emilia's perfect life. My stomach turned. I wasn't just walking into a birthday party for Grandma. I was walking into a financial crime scene, and I was the only one who knew how to read the evidence. I walked up the path, the concrete cracked and uneven beneath my boots. I reached for the door handle, my hand trembling slightly, not from the cold, but from the sheer, overwhelming weight of the mask I was about to put on. I took a deep breath, pushing down the successful architect and pulling up the struggling daughter. I opened the door. The betrayal hit me the moment I stepped across the threshold, sharper and colder than the wind outside. It wasn't a shout or a slap, it was the silence. The laughter from the kitchen died instantly as the door clicked shut. "Oh," my mother's voice floated out, tight and high-pitched, "Sarah's here." Not Sarah's home, not "it's so good to see you." Just a statement of fact, tinged with mild annoyance. The betrayal wasn't that they didn't love me. It was that they didn't even see me enough to dislike me. I was just a background character in the Amelia show, and I had missed my cue. I dropped my duffel bag in the hallway. It landed with a soft thump on the hardwood floor, a sound that seemed aggressively loud in the sudden quiet of the house. "Hello," I called out, my voice cracking slightly. I hated how small I sounded in this house. Everywhere else in the world, my voice carried authority. Here, it sounded like a plea. My mother, Susan, appeared from the kitchen. She was wearing a new dress, something floral and expensive-looking that didn't quite hide the stress lines etched around her mouth. She held a glass of white wine in one hand and a dish rag in the other. "You're late," she said, bypassing a hug to gesture vaguely at my coat. "Did you hit traffic? Robert said the traffic was terrible getting Amelia." "Flight landed a bit late," I lied smoothly, "and the Uber took a while." "Well, hurry up and get changed," she said, her eyes sweeping over my plain sweater with a critical squint. "Amelia is already dressed, and she wants to take some family photos before Grandma arrives. She needs the lighting to be right." "Hi, Mom. Good to see you too," I said, the sarcasm slipping out before I could check it. Susan sighed, a long, suffering sound that implied I was being difficult on purpose. "Don't start, Sarah. Today is about Grandma, and Amelia has had a very stressful week with her engagement metrics. She needs this to go smoothly." Engagement metrics. I almost laughed. My sister's job was posting photos of lattes and outfits she couldn't afford, while I was building algorithms that managed high-frequency trading for global banks. But in this house, metrics meant likes, not profit margins. "I'll go put my bag away," I said, stepping past her. I walked up the stairs, the runner threadbare in the middle. I noticed peeling paint on the banister, a water stain on the ceiling that hadn't been there last Christmas. The house was decaying, slowly but surely, the maintenance deferred year after year. I knew why. Every spare dollar, every line of credit, every ounce of equity was being funneled into Amelia. Private school tuition had turned into university tuition, which had turned into a gap year in Paris, which had turned into subsidizing her influencer lifestyle in the city. I entered my old bedroom. It was exactly as I had left it at 18, a museum of a girl who had escaped. The twin bed, the cheap particle board desk, the faded posters. It was cold in the room. The vent was likely closed to save heat. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. I had 3 missed calls from my broker in New York and a text from the closing attorney. "Deed is recorded. Keys are with the doorman at the new place. Congratulations on the penthouse, Sarah. It's a masterpiece." I opened the attachment, a PDF of the deed to a $4 million penthouse overlooking Central Park. My name, Sarah redacted, black and white, undeniable. I scrolled through the photos on my phone. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the marble kitchen island that cost more than my father's car, the private terrace where I planned to drink my morning coffee. It was mine, all of it. Built on nights where I didn't sleep, on weekends I spent coding until my fingers cramped, on a decade of relentless, solitary grind. I looked up at the cracked mirror on the back of my bedroom door. I looked tired, plain, and defeated. "They have no idea," I whispered to my reflection. The words felt dangerous, like holding a live wire. I unzipped the inner pocket of my duffel bag and took out a thick manila envelope. Inside were the printed copies of the deed, the closing statement, and the photos. I had brought them to show Grandma privately. I wanted her to know that one of her granddaughters had made it, that the line of poverty and bad decisions stopped with me. I wanted her to be proud before she passed. But as I held the envelope, a darker thought coiled in my chest. This wasn't just proof of success. It was a weapon. In a house built on lies and financial delusions, the truth was the most destructive thing I could possibly possess. "Sarah," Amelia's voice shrieked from downstairs. "The lighting is dying, move your ass." I flinched. The tone was so familiar, so entitled. It was the voice of a girl who had never been told no in her entire life. I slipped the envelope into my tote bag, burying it beneath a scarf and a book. "Coming," I yelled back. As I walked back downstairs, I touched the tote bag at my side. They thought I was the broke sister, the failure who fixed computers for a living. They thought I was trapped in their dynamic, dependent on their scraps. But they had forgotten one crucial T. Hing. I wasn't the one who needed them. They were the ones who were about to need me. Backstory is a funny thing. It colors everything you see in the present. When I looked at my parents, Robert and Susan, I didn't just see a middle-aged couple fretting over appetizers. I saw the timeline of my own neglect. When I was 16, I qualified for a prestigious coding camp in Silicon Valley. It was a scholarship program, but I needed airfare and room and board. It was $500. My father had looked at me, sighed, and said, "We just can't stretch it right now, Sarah. Things are tight." 2 weeks later, they bought Amelia a prom dress that cost $600. Not for her senior prom, for her sophomore prom, because she had to look the part. I stayed home that summer and taught myself Python on a library computer. I got into the State University on a full academic ride. I worked 3 jobs, cafeteria shifts at 5 a.m., IT help desk in the afternoons, and tutoring on weekends to pay for my books and living expenses. I never asked them for a dime because I knew the answer. Amelia, on the other hand, went to a private liberal arts college that cost $60,000 a year. My parents took out a second mortgage. When she graduated with a degree in media studies and no job prospects, they paid for her apartment in the city for 3 years. Now, standing in the living room, I saw the culmination of that investment. Amelia was posing in front of the fireplace, a ring light set up on a tripod that was dangerously close to knocking over Grandma's antique vase. She looked expensive. Her hair was a cascade of perfect, honey blonde waves, likely the result of a $300 salon visit. She wore a cream-colored silk dress that clung to her frame, paired with designer heels that I recognized from the latest season. Her makeup was flawless, a mask of contour and highlighter that made her look like a porcelain doll. "Finally," Amelia said, not looking at me, but adjusting her hair in the reflection of her phone screen. "You look tired, Sarah. Are you eating enough? You look gray." "I've been working a lot," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "International hours." "Right, fixing computers or whatever," she dismissed, snapping a selfie. She turned to me then, her blue eyes raking over my outfit with practiced disdain. "You're not wearing that for Grandma's dinner, are you?" "It's just a dinner at home, Amelia. I'm comfortable." "It's an event," she corrected, her voice taking on that lecturing tone she used for her followers. "Grandma is 80. This is content. I mean, this is a milestone. We need to look cohesive. You look like you just rolled out of a dumpster behind a Best Buy." My father, Robert, walked in from the garage. He looked older than the last time I saw him. His hair was thinning, and he had a permanent stoop to his shoulders, the posture of a man carrying a weight he couldn't put down. "Girls, please," he muttered, wiping grease from his hands onto a rag. "Let's just have a nice evening. Amelia, is the car locked? I don't want leaves getting in the interior." "It's fine, Daddy," Amelia cooed, her tone shifting instantly to sweet and manipulative. "Did you see how it sparkles in the driveway? It elevates the whole curb appeal of the house." "It's a beautiful car, honey," he said, his voice hollow. "Beautiful." I looked at my father. "Dad, how are you managing the payments on that?" I thought you said the retirement accounts were taking a hit from the market. Emilia whipped her head around, her eyes narrowing. Excuse me, why are you talking about money? That is so tacky, Sarah. Daddy wanted to do something nice for me because I've been working so hard on my brand. It's an investment. I need reliable transportation for meetings. Meetings at the mall, I asked quietly. I have brand partnerships, she snapped. I'm an influencer, Sarah. You wouldn't understand. You sit in a cubicle all day staring at code. I build connections. I have an audience. An audience doesn't pay a car note, I said. Sarah, my mother's voice was sharp from the kitchen doorway. Enough. Stop being jealous. Just because your sister is successful and popular doesn't mean you have to tear her down. Be happy for her. Successful, the word tasted like ash in my mouth. I am happy for her, I lied, the words practiced and smooth. I'm just worried about you guys. We are fine, my father said, though he wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked at the floor, shifting his weight. We're handling it. Emilia smirked, a small, cruel curving of her lips. She walked over to me, her heels clicking on the floor, and reached out to pick a piece of lint off my sweater. Don't worry about us, Sarah, she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. We know things are hard for you. Mom told me you're still renting that studio apartment. It must be so cramped. If you need me to send you some of my PR packages, like old makeup or clothes that don't fit me, I can. I hate throwing things away, and you look like you could use the help. She patted my shoulder, a gesture that was patronizing enough to make my teeth ache. I'm fine, Emilia, I said, stepping back. I don't need your hand-me-downs. Suit yourself, she shrugged, turning back to her ring light. Just try not to stand directly behind me in the photos. You'll throw off the aesthetic. The doorbell rang. That's Grandma, Susan shouted. Everyone places, smiles. Sarah tried to look alive. I took a deep breath, clutching my tote bag tighter. The antagonist in my life wasn't a villain in a cape. She was a 25-year-old in silk who believed the world owed her a living. And my parents were the bankers who kept cashing the checks. They thought I was the tragedy of the family. I felt the heavy envelope against my hip. Tonight, they were going to learn that tragedies come in two forms, the ones you suffer and the ones you create for yourself. And they had been building theirs, brick by brick, for 20 years. Grandma arrived in a flurry of cold air and perfume, looking frail but sharp-eyed in her Sunday best. The dynamic in the house shifted instantly. It was no longer just a family gathering. It was a theater production, and the curtain had just gone up. Happy birthday, Ma, my father, Robert, boomed, his voice too loud, too cheerful. He rushed to take her coat, playing the role of the devoted son perfectly, masking the fact that he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Emilia was right behind him, practically pirouetting into the hallway. Graham, she squealed, using a nickname she hadn't used since she was 6 because she knew it tested well with her demographic. She threw her arms around Grandma, careful not to crush her own silk dress. You look stunning. Oh my God, let me get a boomerang of us hugging. Smile. Grandma blinked, disoriented by the phone thrust in her face. Hello, dear. Is that videoing me? It's for the Graham, Emilia laughed, checking the screen. Look at us, 3 generations of beauty. I stood back near the staircase, watching. I saw the way my mother, Susan, nervously smoothed her dress, eyeing Grandma's purse like she was trying to calculate the weight of the checkbook inside. I saw the way my father's smile didn't reach his eyes. And I saw Emilia, glowing, consuming all the oxygen in the room. Hi, Grandma, I said softly when the flurry died down. Grandma peered around Emilia's voluminous hair. Sarah, is that you? Come here, child, you look thin. I'm fine, Grandma, I said, stepping forward to give her a gentle hug. She smelled like lavender and old paper. It was the only scent in the house that felt real. She works too hard, Ma, my mother interjected quickly, steering Grandma toward the living room. Always in front of those computer screens, it's not healthy. Unlike Emilia, who is out and about meeting people, networking. Networking, Grandma repeated, settling into the armchair my father held out for her. Is that what they call it now? It's a career, Grandma, Emilia corrected, sitting on the arm of the chair and draping herself elegantly. I have influence. People trust my taste. We moved to the living room for the gift exchange before dinner. This was Emilia's favorite part. It wasn't about generosity, it was about the display. Me first, Emilia chirped. She produced a small, rectangular box wrapped in gold paper. I saw this and I just knew it was you. Grandma opened it with shaking hands. It was a silk scarf, emblazoned with a massive, gaudy designer logo. I recognized the brand. It cost $400. Oh, Grandma said, touching the slippery fabric. It's very bright. It's Italian silk, Grandma, Emilia said, beaming. It's the same one that famous actress wore last week. I thought you could wear it to church. Show the ladies you're still hip. Thank you, dear, Grandma said politely, placing it back in the box. I watched my father wince. I knew why. He had probably put that scarf on his credit card yesterday. Emilia didn't have $400. Emilia didn't have $40. My turn, I said quietly. I handed Grandma a square package wrapped in simple brown paper. Emilia scoffed audibly. Brown paper? Did you run out of wrapping paper, Sarah? It's craft paper, Emilia, I said calmly. Grandma tore it open. Inside was a leather-bound photo album. I spent the last few months digitizing all of Grandpa's old slides, I explained, my voice steady. I restored the color, fixed the scratches, and had them printed in a lay-flat book. There are pictures in there from your honeymoon that you haven't seen in 50 years. Grandma opened the book. The room went silent. She turned the page, her hand trembling. There, in high definition, was my late grandfather, young and laughing, standing on a pier in 1965. Oh, Grandam. A whispered, a tear traced a path through the powder on her cheek. Oh, my word, look at him, he looks so real. It's beautiful, Sarah, my father said, his voice thick with genuine emotion for the first time that night. It's cute, Emilia interrupted, her voice shrill. She couldn't stand the silence not being about her. Very DIY, very crafty. It's nice that you have so much free time to scan pictures, Sarah. Some of us are just so busy with work. It took time, I said, looking directly at her. But some things are worth investing in. Well, let's eat. Susan clapped her hands, desperate to break the tension. I made a roast. I stood up, grabbing my tote bag. I felt the envelope inside, the sharp corner of the folder pressing against my hip. The investigation phase was over. I had seen enough. I saw the fear in my parents' eyes, the narcissism in my sister's soul, and the absolute lack of respect they had for me. It was time to stop being the observer. The dining room was set with the good china plates that had chips in the rims and silver that needed polishing. The roast was dry, the wine was cheap, but the conversation was rich with delusion. For the first 20 minutes, I said nothing. I cut my meat, took small sips of water, and let them talk. So, Robert said, trying to sound casual as he poured more wine into Grandma's glass. Emilia was telling us about a potential partnership with a travel agency, a trip to Cabo. Yes, Emilia lit up, waving her fork. They want to send me to this 5-star resort, all expenses paid. I just have to post 3 reels a day and 5 stories. It's practically work, but the exposure would be insane. I could finally hit 50,000 followers. That sounds wonderful, dear, Grandma said. Does it pay? Emilia laughed, a tinkling, condescending sound. Grandma, money isn't everything. It's about building the brand. Once I hit 100,000, the sponsorship deals start coming in. The big money is just around the corner. Daddy says we just need to bridge the gap for a few more months, right, Daddy? Robert looked down at his plate. Right, just a bridge. A bridge, I repeated, the word slipping out. Like the bridge loan you took out on the house. The table froze. The clinking of silverware stopped. Excuse me, Susan asked, her eyes wide. What did you say? I asked about the bridge, I said, taking a sip of water. Since we're talking about financing Emilia's lifestyle, is the trip to Cabo paid for, Emilia? Or are expenses paid, just the hotel, and Dad has to buy the plane ticket? Emilia's face flushed pink. You are so jealous. It's pathetic. Just because you're stuck in some cubicle coding boring software while I'm living my dreams. I'm not jealous, I said calmly. I'm concerned, because I saw the foreclosure notice on the counter when I came in. I hadn't seen it on the counter. I had seen it in the public records database 3 days ago when I ran a background check on my parents' assets to see if I needed to intervene. But the bluff worked. Susan dropped her napkin. Robert turned a shade of gray that matched the walls. Sarah, my mother hissed, don't you dare talk about adult matters at the dinner table. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I asked. I handle financial risk for a living, Mom. I know exactly what it looks like when liabilities exceed assets. And buying a convertible for an unemployed 25-year-old when you're behind on the mortgage is practically the definition of high risk. I am not unemployed, Emilia shrieked. She slammed her hand on the table, making the water glasses jump. I am a content creator. I am building an empire. You're building debt, I said, my voice rising just a fraction, hard and cold. You're 25, Emilia. You have a degree you don't use, a car you didn't pay for, and a superiority complex funded by parents who are drowning. Robert, make her stop, Susan cried out. Sarah, that's enough, my father said, though his voice lacked any real authority. We are managing. We support Emilia because we believe in her potential. Unlike you, she needs a little help to get started. You've always been independent. You're fine. You have your little job. My little job, I repeated. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just been invited into the cage. You think I have a little job. You fix computers, Emilia spat. You're IT support. You probably make 60 grand a year and think you're rich. You have no idea what real luxury is. You live in a shoebox studio. Is that what you think? I reached down into my tote bag. You think I live in a shoebox? We know you do, Susan said, her lip curling. We visited you 3 years ago. It was tiny. 3 years is a long time in my industry, I said. And IT support isn't exactly what I do. I build the architecture that banks used to trade currency. And when you do that well, they pay you a lot. I pulled the envelope out. It was thick, heavy, and ominous. Emilia, you wanted to talk about luxury? I tossed the envelope onto the center of the table. It landed with a heavy thwack right next to the roast beef. Open it. Emilia stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. What is this? Your tax returns? Trying to prove you make more than minimum wage. Open it, I commanded. My voice had shifted. It wasn't the daughter's voice anymore. It was the voice I used to close deals worth millions. It was the voice of absolute authority. Emilia reached out, her manicured nails scratching against the manila paper. She pulled the clasp and slid the contents out. The first thing that slid out was the photo. An 8x10 glossy print of the view from my living room. Central Park, spread out like a green carpet, framed by the unmistakable skyline of Billionaires Row. What is this? Emilia frowned. Did you print a picture from Google? Keep looking, I said. She pulled out the next sheet, the closing disclosure. Buyer, Sarah last name, she read aloud, her voice wavering. Property address, 111 West 57th Street, Unit PH, she stopped. She looked at the numbers. Purchase price, she whispered. Her eyes went wide. She looked up at me, then back at the paper. 4 million. 4.2, I corrected gently. I got a deal because I paid cash. My father dropped his fork. It hit the china plate with a chaotic clatter that echoed in the silence. Cash, he choked out. Sarah, you cash. I've been saving for 7 years, Dad, I said, leaning back in my chair. I invested. I built my own portfolio. I didn't take vacations. I didn't buy cars. I didn't ask you for a dime. And last week I bought my dream home, a penthouse in the city. Emilia stood up slowly, the papers crinkling in her grip. Her face was turning a blotchy red. "You're lying," she whispered. "You're lying, you can't afford this. You're just Sarah, you're boring Sarah." "I'm wealthy Sarah," I corrected. "And that boring job pays me a base salary of $400,000 a year, plus bonuses. My bonuses alone are more than that convertible outside." "You BTCH," Emilia screamed. The sound was primal ugly. She threw the papers at me. They fluttered down like confetti. "You selfish, lying BTCH, you had this money the whole time? You let mom and dad struggle? You let me drive that old Honda for years before I got the convertible? You could have bought me a car. You could have paid off the house." "Why would I asked, not flinching as a piece of paper hit my face. "You told me I was the disappointment. You told me I was fixing computers. You told me to enjoy my little life. So I did." "We are family," Susan wailed, standing up now, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of joy, but tears of missed opportunity. "Sarah, how could you hide this? We are drowning in debt. Your father is taking blood pressure medication because of the stress. We owe the bank, we owe the credit cards." "And whose fault is that?" I asked, slamming my hand on the table. I stood up, matching their energy. "Is it my fault? Or is it because you decided to fund a celebrity lifestyle for a daughter who has never worked a day in her life?" I pointed at Emilia. "You are 25, you are not a child, you are a leech. And you," I pointed at my parents, "you let her feed on you until there was nothing left. And you wanted me to be the backup plan. You thought, oh, Sarah is used to nothing, she'll take care of us when we're old." "You have $4 million, Emilia screeched, grabbing her steak knife and pointing it vaguely in my direction, not as a threat, but as an extension of her rage. "You have to help us. It's your duty. Give Dad the money to pay off the house. Right now." "No," I said. The word hung in the air, absolute and final. "What do you mean no?" Robert asked, his voice trembling. "Sarah, please. The interest rates, the balloon payment is due next month. If we don't pay, we lose the house." "I bought a penthouse," I said coldly. "I didn't buy a rescue mission for people who treat me like garbage." "You ungrateful little," Susan started, moving toward me. "Stop." The voice didn't come from me. It came from the head of the table. We all froze. We had forgotten Grandma was there. She was sitting perfectly still, her hands folded over the photo album I had given her. Her face was unreadable, hard as stone. "Claire," Grandma said, looking at my aunt, who had been silent the entire meal, sipping her wine and watching the chaos with sharp, observant eyes. "Tell them." Aunt Claire set her wine glass down. The sound was delicate, precise. She looked at Robert, then at Susan. "Tell them what, Ma?" Claire asked, though she knew. "Tell them about the loan," Grandma said. Her voice was ice. Robert turned pale, ghost white. "Ma, don't, please." "Rob." Aunt Claire said, her voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "You told Sarah you were drowning in debt to the bank, but that's not the whole truth, is it?" She turned to me. "Sarah," Aunt Claire said, "your parents didn't just mortgage the house. 3 years ago, they forged your grandmother's signature to access her retirement savings. They drained her account to pay for Emilia's apartment in the city. They owe the bank, yes, but they owe your grandmother nearly $200,000, and they haven't paid back a cent." The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was the sound of a family shattering into a million irreparable pieces. The room didn't just spin, it tilted on its axis. I looked at my father, the man who had always preached about honest work while dismissing mine. He was slumped in his chair, head in his hands, unable to look at his own mother. "You stole from her?" I whispered. The horror of it was a physical weight in my chest. Grandma lived on a fixed income. She lived simply. "You stole from Grandma to pay for this?" I gestured at Emilia, who was frozen, her mouth slightly open, the steak knife still clutched in her hand like a ridiculous prop. "We didn't steal," Susan cried out, her voice shrill with panic. "It was a loan. We were going to pay it back. As soon as Amelia's career took off, we were going to pay it back with interest. We did it for the family. For the family, Grandma's voice was quiet, but it carried more power than Amelia's screaming ever could. She stood up slowly, leaning on the table for support. She looked small, but her eyes were blazing. You did it for her. She pointed a trembling finger at Amelia. You did it for a fantasy. You robbed me to buy clothes and trips for a grown woman who plays pretend. Grandma, don't say that. Amelia stepped forward, tears welling up. Real tears this time, tears of a child realizing the candy store is burning down. I'm going to make it. I'm going to be famous. I just need a little more time. You have had 7 years, Amelia, Grandma snapped. Sarah had nothing. Sarah had no help, and Sarah built a life. You have consumed everything everyone gave you and you are still hungry. Grandma turned to Robert. I knew the money was gone, Robert. I saw the statements. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to send my own son to jail for fraud. I thought you were desperate. I thought you were in trouble. She looked at the diamond bracelet on Amelia's wrist, the designer shoes, the new car in the driveway. But you weren't in trouble. You were just vain. Ma, please, Robert sobbed. I'm sorry. I just wanted them to have the best. No, I said, stepping forward. You wanted Amelia to have the best. You didn't care if I starved. Sarah, help us, Susan pleaded, grabbing my arm. Her grip was desperate, her nails digging into my sweater. Please, you have the money, you can fix this. Write a check to Grandma, pay off the house. We can start over. We'll be better, we promise. I looked down at my mother's hand. I looked at Amelia, who was watching me with a mix of hatred and desperate hope. This was the trap, not the one I had set for them, but the one they had set for me since birth. The expectation that I would always be the safety net, the fixer, the one who sacrificed so they could shine. I gently, but firmly, peeled my mother's fingers off my arm. No, I said. Sarah, Amelia screamed. You can't do this. You're rich. You have to share. It's not fair. Fair, I laughed, a short, sharp sound. Fair would have been paying for my college like you paid for hers. Fair would have been not stealing from Grandma. Fair would be you getting a job. I walked over to Grandma. Grandma, pack your things. You're not staying here tonight. Where am I going? She asked, looking at me with trust. You're coming to New York with me, I said. I have a guest suite. It has a view of the park. And tomorrow, I'm hiring a forensic accountant and a lawyer to look at your finances. If they can recover anything, we will. If not, I will take care of you for the rest of your life. You can't take her. Robert stood up, panic rising. She's our mother. You lost the right to call her that when you forged her signature, Aunt Claire said, standing up and moving to stand beside me. I'll drive her to the city, Sarah. My car is outside. You take your Uber. We'll meet you at the penthouse. Claire, Susan shrieked. You're siding with her. You're destroying this family. This family was destroyed a long time ago, Susan, Aunt Claire said calmly. Sarah just turned on the lights so you could see the wreckage. I picked up my tote bag. I looked at Amelia one last time. She looked small, ridiculous in her silk dress, standing in a dining room that was about to be foreclosed on. Good luck with the influencers, Amelia, I said. I hope they tip well. I walked out the front door. Behind me, the SCR. Eaming started again, a cacophony of blame and panic. But as the door clicked shut, the sound was cut off instantly. Silence, the beautiful, expensive silence of freedom. The legal proceedings were ugly, but swift. With the evidence Aunt Claire provided and the resources I could afford, the truth was undeniable. My parents were forced to sell the house they had leveraged to the hilt, to avoid criminal charges for the fraud against Grandma. The equity was gone. The profit from the sale barely covered the bank loans. They walked away with nothing. No retirement, no assets, no home. They moved into a small 2-bedroom rental in a neighboring town. My father took a job as a greeter at a hardware store. My mother started working reception at a dental office. Amelia's car was repossessed 3 weeks after the birthday dinner. Without the bank of Mom and Dad, her lifestyle evaporated. She had to move back in with them into that small rental apartment. The last I heard, she was working as a hostess at a chain restaurant and her Instagram had gone private. Grandma loved the penthouse. I stood on the terrace, the crisp New York wind whipping my hair. It was 6 months later. The city lights glittered below me like a sea of diamonds. Inside, I could see Grandma sitting by the fireplace, knitting. Aunt Claire was there too, laughing as she poured tea. They were safe, I was safe. The migraine that had plagued me on the flight home had never come back. The crushing weight on my chest was gone. I had spent my whole life trying to be seen by people who were determined to look the other way. I had chased their approval, their love, their validation. But standing there, looking out at the empire I had built with my own 2 hands, I realized I didn't need them to see me. I saw myself. Sarah the architect, Sarah the survivor, Sarah the granddaughter who made it right. I took a sip of my wine, a vintage far better than anything my parents had ever pretended to enjoy, and turned my back on the skyline. I walked back inside, sliding the glass door shut, sealing out the cold and the noise. "Sarah, come look at this pattern," Grandma called out, smiling. "Coming, Grandma," I said. I sat down on the sofa between them. I was home. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't a performance. It was real.